important to take a step back sometimes and look at life from a different perspective. And today we have happiness archaeologist Larysa here to give us a different perspective and find the good in ADHD. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you wanted to start because ADHD, it talks about a deficit, but it's actually, some studies are finding it's the complete opposite of that.
There is a theory that it's actually an abundance of attention to be on different things. The idea being back in the hunter-gatherer days, some of the other people would be like, picking berries, singing songs, boys and berries, and then they're not going to notice a saber-toothed tiger creeping in. But the person with ADHD, which is actually paying attention to everything, is going to notice something, they'll hear the leaves crackling, and they'll be the one to possibly save the day.
Now, you actually mentioned to me earlier, and I'd like you to share this story about when you were a little bit younger.
I was in an auditorium, and everyone was watching the show kind of like, and I noticed a faint beeping in the distance. Now, this was much closer to 9/11, and it was kind of like an ET snake, like extender, like, what is this? But everyone else was just watching the show, and I knew that the only other person who was going to notice was my friend who also has ADHD. And again, picking up on things before they become a problem, it's good to notice your surroundings, and perhaps you'll be safer by having a friend with ADHD.
Now, I think it's so easy to fall into being the person that's just picking the berries or sitting there just watching the show, because it's so easy to just hone in on one thing and focus on one thing that we don't even realize that other things are going on around us. Now, you mentioned earlier that I want to say your perspective is so unique because it's so easy to just be okay, say your child gets diagnosed with ADHD, and then you just say, okay, I'm going to take the medicine, they're going to do this. But there's actually some other things that we can do to help.
Oh, yeah. I had learned about the Feingold diet. A lot of people think that after a birthday party, kids are hopped up on sugar. But actually, a lot of times they're acting crazy because of the artificial colors and flavors. So if you look into the Feingold diet, you can find you can really bring some of those symptoms down through diet.
And I think it's so important that we do actually address that, if your child has it or you have it, talk to your doctor before you're going to do any of these things. But it's also important to see this different perspective because you don't actually realize that other options exist out there. Now, for you, how do you find that having a different perspective, not only for ADHD, but for everything in your life, how do you feel like that helps you?
I find just look at things as a good thing. Just decide it's a blessing and find the proof to support that idea, and you'll find it.
And every time that you come in, you are just such a happy person, and it makes me, you exude happiness. It makes me happy because it's so easy to just get stuck on those little things. And if it's raining outside, you say, oh, it's raining. But if you think of the positive and think, oh, my garden is getting watered, just think of everything positive in that aspect. It makes life a lot easier. Do you find that staying positive, even though it can be hard, actually has you living a better life?
Absolutely. And it's not that I'm immune to any kind of difficulties in life, but I find you use techniques, you use gratitude, even if you have to distract yourself. On the way here, a package wasn't delivered for me, so I put on a song and I was dancing as I was coming because I didn't want to be focused on something that's not going right.
Well, and it's so easy to focus on the things that aren't going right. Now, getting back to looking at ADHD in a different perspective, I want to discuss the artists and the multiple projects that we touched on earlier.
I have noticed it's not uncommon for artists to have what some would call ADHD, but they make it work for them. They might have 5 different art projects going on. They work on one for as long as they can, and they jump to the next one. So it's a good ability to multitask, and then you just find a system that works for you. Sometimes disorganization can be an issue, or being, a relationship with time, being places late, but when you create the life that fits, you don't need to make different kinds of situations. It just works.
Now, what about organizing? I see that we were going to discuss this a little bit more in depth.
Well, I find sometimes I have to break things down. Like one time I had a project to mail out a bunch of things in snail mail, which for me, for some reason, is not so easy. So I had to just make a list. First, fill the envelopes, seal the envelopes, address the envelopes, stamp the envelopes, and then the biggest part was bring them to the post office. But even breaking them down to such a small level, it just gives me something to check off and to kind of follow a rubric.
And that makes it so much easier. It makes it so much less stressful as well, actually having each and everything laid out there. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming in,
Thank you.
because you bring a different perspective. I feel like every time you come on our show, whether it was the laughter yoga or anything that you come on our show to talk about, you always have such a different perspective, and you really open my eyes to something new, and I think you do that for everyone out there. So I want to thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
More information right on our website on mymassappeal.com.